Hey everybody, Germany's Coaster Yard here, and in this episode of Germanator Studios, we are going to start by revisiting some of my former Germanator Studios parks for inspiration. So this is the original Germanator Studios. This one actually has some videos about it published to my channel that you guys can go find if you want. But specifically what I want to look at is over here, the dinosaur, or what did I call it? The world of dinosaurs, I'm guessing. Yes. So, this is a section of the park that's themed to dinosaurs, if you couldn't guess that. Uh, so, in basically all of my Germanator Studios parks, I've had a land that's like sort of dinosaur themed. And if you haven't figured it out yet, that's what we're going to start next. The land adjacent to the entrance area will be our dinosaur land. And I wanted to revisit some of my other ones because I feel like each time I build one, it sort of goes a step further. It progresses a step further. And I want to sort of look at that progression and see what we can take from previous dinosaur themed areas that I've designed and apply to our current one. So this one's pretty simple. This original section was just like a midway filled with rides, and I didn't really like it because it looked like a giant concrete slab in an otherwise well-developed park. So I basically got rid of that and designed this, and I think it works pretty well for the area and for an early park of mine. Um, so it's still pretty small, but I'll show you what it has. So it has like a simple walkthrough exhibit where you can see the different dinosaurs. I've put the little placards in front of each one so people could read about them. And we also have a small junior roller coaster over here. It's pretty simple, nothing too crazy. We also have an RMC I designed using the extended coaster and some custom supports. Now these are available pieces in game, but I use them to create custom supports, and we'll probably do this later in the series. I would like to build an RMC because I think it's pretty cool, and you can do it in vanilla Rollercoaster Tycoon. And other than that, small little dinosaur go around there and some dino themed shops, and then we have our log ride. I don't think any dinosaur area in any theme park is complete without some sort of water or log ride. So it's pretty straightforward. It's basically not a recreation, but you can tell it's heavily inspired by the Jurassic Park River Adventure rides at the Universal Studios parks. It's basically a direct ripoff. Even going into the little building here, that looks kind of science-y. There's like a cage in here, like some sort of incubator with the eggs and all that. And I even went over here, if you look closely, you can see the T-Rex scene right before the drop. So when I say it's inspired by, yeah, it's a ripoff. I admit it. But I think things like this are useful to look at and to consider when we're designing our next attraction. And I think it's fun to look at and revisit. And yeah, not all of my dinosaur parks have water rides. In fact, I think this is the only one that does include a full-on water attraction. So I think that would be something we may want to consider putting back. But let's jump over to Germanator Stu 3Os. That's right, it's the third iteration of Germanator Studios. And already, based off this entrance area, you can see I considered having an entrance, which you didn't even see in the other one, aside from where the peeps spawn in. And you can see this park is also a lot more dense with attractions. It took about 2 minutes to load, so there was a bit of a gap between those two clips. But over here is our dinosaur area. And this one I'm pretty proud of how it turned out. I like that I was able to surround it with water, so it's kind of like an island. And in fact, it looks like we called it Dinosaur Island. I'm sure that was not inspired in any way by where I work at the Columbus Zoo, where we have a Dinosaur Island boat ride. But anyway, So this one I like. This one was more of like a research themed place. You can see the little archaeology dig area here where the kids can go and explore these fossil pieces, and it's dirt instead of just a normal pathway. And I had the skeleton piece too laid out across here. We actually used these same scenery pieces, if you'll remember, in our museum, so we may revisit them again in the dinosaur area. Not sure about that yet, but worth considering. And we also have our small little walkthrough attraction to this side. In fact, this is much smaller than I remember it being. But it's here nonetheless. And yeah, pretty straightforward. And the dinosaur go around. You gotta include that in every dinosaur themed area because it's, I think it's just, I mean, it's one of the few dinosaur themed rides in the game, so you have to include it. Then I did a bridge over into like a Jurassic Park style holding area. You can see I had the little gateway here and the big sort of industrial looking fences. I'm pretty proud of how this turned out overall, but I think if I were to include something like this, I would want to do something of a redesign. But I used various fence pieces here to sort of create like a barbed wire or electric fence type look, and I even used the wooden porch beams, I believe, from the Western scenery set or the Western wall set, I should say, to really like give it some structure and some depth. And I like how that turned out. And then we have a ride here called Predator Pursuit, I believe. Yes. This is just a standard sort of spinning coaster, a custom spinning coaster. Features 2 lift hills. You're basically going around this like research facility. You can see the different structures and buildings, and I like how those turned out. They definitely have like a modern, almost like a prison-like feel, but I think you can understand what I mean if you've seen like the Jurassic World movies or been to Universal Studios. It sort of has that same feel about it. So I like how this turned out overall, and we have our stereotypical T-Rex scene. You do a big helix around the T-Rex if I can get inside this building. So overall, oops, we missed it going around there. But overall, I mean, you can see what I was going for, I think. Just a fun family coaster that goes through the tropical climate, passes by some different dinosaurs. Pretty straightforward. But you can see, like, this is definitely a step further along in that direction of the theme park, if that makes sense. It looks a bit nicer. I even, on the side of this show building, which is for another water attraction. Now, one thing I regret not doing is including this sort of scenery all the way around, but I decided, hey, it would be a cool idea to paint the side of the show building so that way from this perspective down here, it blends in as a background and doesn't look like just a giant building right next to the dinosaur area. So I think it was a valiant effort I put into this, but still more work could have gone into it to make it better. And the reason I bring attention to that is because I think going forward, especially with the area we're about to build, I think these considerations could benefit us, and I want to strive to make my best dinosaur land yet, if that makes sense. And now, we're going to head on over, once again, to Germanator Studios. That's right, iteration number 4 of the park. This one, if I said the other one was dense, I guess I was lying, because I think this is even more densely packed with themed areas. Definitely worth revisiting more at some point, because I think this park has the most to learn from in terms of going forward, since it's the last park I did. One quick thing I'll point out too, you can see where I used my modular hotel concept over here, and after building the hotels in the last 2 episodes, I didn't realize just how small this hotel was. It's tiny, there's like no rooms in here, but I did have another hotel along the beachfront, and this one sort of has like a convention center too over the ocean. And just seeing all of this, it looks so small since we have so much space in our other Germanator Studios Park, the one we're working on now. Um, but we're not here for the hotels. Just a quick side note. But we're here for the dino area. Yeah, you couldn't have guessed that one, could ya? And this one, I'm actually really proud of how this one turned out because this one is a true island. It's surrounded on all sides by water, so there's really not a lot of room to hide anything. And in fact, I don't think I did really try to hide anything. Um, but this island sort of has two sections. For one thing, I called it the Lost World, inspired by a 4D theater movie I used to run for the Columbus Zoo. And this one, you can see it's a step forward. So we sort of have like just a tropical beach with these thatch roof buildings, and it's all just sort of nonchalant. In fact, none of what I'm showing you in this moment is dinosaur themed, but it sets the mood and it sets a friendly area that isn't too scary. And you'll notice on the border of this area we have these prehistoric wall pieces with the big spikes, and that's sort of what draws you in and what establishes the mood of the dinosaur area. So on the other side of this wall is where we have the dinosaur walkthrough attraction, and this one is much larger than the others. It's more spacious, and I like having that space because it doesn't feel like everything's clumped together. It doesn't feel like it's trying to be a walkthrough attraction. It just feels like a large area that you can explore and discover things as you go through it, which I like that step forward from the previous two parks. And of course, it all surrounds this giant volcano. And at the end of each night, we have a pyrotechnics display, a mixed master fireworks display that all comes out from this volcano, which in its own way is pretty cool. In fact, I'll show you what I did too with the volcano. We won't watch the display, but I used these torch pieces to light it up so it kind of looks like it's lava-y. And from across the park, I think it works pretty well. Um, and I do want to include a volcano in the current iteration as well, but I think I want to go the forced perspective route where the volcano is a lot narrower and it's sort of behind everything, so you can't go right up to the base of it, and from the pathway itself the volcano will look like it's further away in the background. And I think if and when we do our mixed master display, I will include the volcano in some capacity, sort of like we have here. And that will all be more further explained and broken down in future episodes when we work on it. But another thing I wanted to show you guys was what did I call it? Oh yes, Call of the Wild Cafe. So this is basically knockoff of Rainforest Cafe. You go inside and there's all these dinosaur animatronics inside. Ooh, if I can get in there. Oh, we got the saber tooth too. So it really is just the various prehistoric animals. It's pretty simple. It's probably about as good as it could be for the limitations of Rollercoaster Tycoon. Nothing too crazy, but it's there, and I think it was a fun build to make. And yeah, zooming out, I think it fits in rather nicely. It's tucked in right there between the wall and the volcano, so from anywhere else in the park you can't really see it. And we use I believe these are the castle wall pieces to help it look more natural. It has a stone exterior instead of our standard concrete exterior, and I think that works out really nicely. If we were to do something like this in the current park, I would definitely want to take it a step in a different direction. But overall, I think this area works really nicely, and I'm proud with how it turned out. And on that note, we are going to jump over to a time lapse. Alright, so we are back in our park now, and we are getting started on the current version of our dinosaur, prehistoric, Jurassic, whatever you want to call it, world. So you can see here that I am editing or adjusting the pathways to transition a little more smoothly into this area. So I wanted to have a long straight line because, as you can see here, we are building a bridge. I don't know if I'm going to have a bridge in between every area, but for this one I thought a bridge would look good. And you can see I'm sort of mapping out the pathways here just to get a general idea. And a lot of what you see me doing right now in these first few minutes will be further refined. That gray patch I placed there is about where I want the volcano to be. And right here, I'm basically laying the foundation for a show building, or what will eventually be a show building. Um, I want to do some sort of indoor attraction, not a roller coaster, I don't think. Um, I'm not sure yet what I want to do. It might be a water ride, or it might be something similar to Dinosaur at Animal Kingdom using one of the vehicular tracked rides in Rollercoaster Tycoon. But yeah, that will be determined at a later date. But for now, we're starting on the tunnel. So I wanted to have sort of a cave-like tunnel between the two areas to sort of set the mood and act like sort of a gateway between the two. I don't know how well this works, only because you already sort of cross the bridge between the two areas. Um, I just don't know if I like the way it flows. But I like the idea of having a tunnel, and I definitely want to leave it for now and see how we can incorporate it into the surrounding area. And I think that's really what will decide, or what will make or break whether or not we use the tunnel in the end. But I think we're going to keep it in some capacity, um, because I end up eventually putting a creek underneath the bridge. And you'll see how I go about that later. Um, but all that is to say, the bridge is almost definitely going to stay. Whether or not we keep the tunnel hinges on what we can do to make it look nice and to fit in. Um, and I'm surprised I actually had something to talk about that wasn't just narrating what I'm doing. Um, if you've been watching for a while, you know that's kind of rare. So I hate to break it to you, but I'm going to narrate what I'm doing again. So I started building a concrete wall. I used a gray colored wall piece, and then you can see I put the porch, the western porch columns, I guess we can call them, on the other side, the other edge of those, to add some depth and to make it look like some sort of reinforced concrete wall. And I made them a dark color so they look almost like they could be maybe made out of steel or something and not wood. I don't know if I'm going to keep that. I don't know yet if I want this area to have more of like a modern feel, like a Jurassic Park kind of situation, or if I want to make it more prehistoric, where it you really feel like you're in the past. And given the theme of this park being like you're going throughout different eras in history, I think it would make sense to have it strictly prehistoric. And if I do that, I would definitely swap out the walls. Um, but I'm also not dead set on any one era or another. For instance, the whole theme of this park in a way is time traveling, and what could be more futuristic sci-fi than time traveling? So the point there being, maybe it would make more sense to have sort of like a futuristic outpost within the prehistoric era, at least for certain attractions. Um, this is all really up in the air right now, um, and that's fine. Right here, I do want to point out I was making sort of a drainage pipeline, I guess, for the water. If the water level got too high, it could drain through those holes. And you saw me take a terrain piece. You can place terrain tiles as a scenery piece, and if you place them underground, they create a hollowed out space. So I did that to make the area behind those little windows hollow, so it doesn't just look like an abrupt concrete ending. That's not something I do often, but it is a useful technique in certain situations, and it's definitely a good thing to be aware of if you want to do more advanced building in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3. And right here, I'm just sort of extending that wall a little bit to fit in with the scenery right across the bridge. And then I'm finishing off the landscaping right around in this area. I forgot to put dirt in there to make it consistent, so at some point I'll need to remember to do that. And actually, this is the last thing we'll be doing in this episode. Is just finishing off um, the landscaping and the path boundaries on this side of the park um, as part of our entrance area. So it's nothing too crazy, and that is where I'm going to leave it today. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and I will see you hopefully on Monday. Bye.